Welcome back everyone to the second part of my MGSV suppressive equipment run. If you missed the first part, I encourage you to go watch that one first, as I laid out all the rules and go over the first 6 episodes I did for this challenge. This video will be going over the remaining 5. However, I do have a special surprise episode to cap it off with at the very end, and it's something you're going to want to stick around for. It's something that I've been putting off for far too long. So, without further ado, let me shut up about whatever I'm talking about and start going over the rest of the game, starting with the war economy. We're starting this video off strong with one of my favorite missions to do. Why? Because it's one of the more challenging ones. There's a lot to juggle here. Walker gears, snipers, cameras, and potentially a helo that comes in and patrols the area. To begin this mission, I took off at a dead sprint from my spawn location on a path towards the outer wall of the airfield. I switched over to the decoys as they're going to be my first tool I'd use. I keep pushing over to that wall and eventually position myself well enough to toss over a decoy and deploy it onto the first guard. Upon this successful knockout, my balloon now had the attention of the guard posted up on the sniper's nest. As I waited for him to seal his fate, I turned towards a gate in the fence and began unlocking it to get inside. Now that I was inside, I switched on over to my LLG mines as I was going to set a trap for another patrolling enemy. This mission was well thought out at this point, clearly. Just as I'd placed my trap, I'd hear the popping of a balloon in the distance, and I'd turn to see 2 stun icons through the wall. Being careful to avoid the camera near the outpost entrance, I hurried over to Fulton these 2 up, then ran back just in time to watch my mine do its magic. Then swapping to and lobbing over a stun to the last guy left in the immediate area. Sure, yes, this would draw some attention, but it was all part of the plan. Trust me. After packing the 2 up, I began another long sprint along the outer wall, with the hangar being my destination. Upon my arrival, I decided to toss out another stun, aimed at a walker gear heading over to check out the sound from my last one. Obviously, this noise was much closer to my enemies now, so this sends them into a formation frenzy. I hopped through the window and into the hangar, trying to knock out the walker gear over here, and as I did this, I was notified that the chopper was actually turning back around and wouldn't be coming. Well, that's a relief. Once the other walker was taken down, I turned back once again to see about packing up that first one laying out in the middle of the tarmac. Except, I'd actually find another guy coming from outside the gate, so after another successful stun, I could go about securing 2 of the 3 downed men. Now, the third one had a few hostiles near his location, but after a couple more stuns were sent sailing through the air, they were all 3 down as well. I tossed a couple smokes on their resting locations and tried my best to secure them all, though I missed the first one by accidentally securing his walker instead of him. After 3 of them were Fulton to safety, I'd go on to successfully stun 2 more guards with just 1 stun grenade. Nice. I waited around to make sure the coast was clear of the sniper's vision, then smoked the 2 out for their covert extraction. I had equipped the sleep grenades with the intention of using on the guard that now stood before me, but he began running back into the building, and so I opted to hit the sniper up on the roof instead. As I was moving in to claim my next bounty, the guard I missed earlier had woken up and was now calling into HQ. Fortunately, it wasn't enough for a full-blown alarm, so I kept on up to the snoozing sniper and sent him up via Fulton. This caught the attention of the other sniper up in the crow's nest, and so I'd go on to place one of my LLG mines down at the base of the ladder as a nice little gift for him. But this noise would cause the last sniper up here to get curious and begin sprinting over to my location. Thankfully, there were some air conditioners I can hide behind, and I would use a sleep grenade on him. Except, he had a gas mask, and the gas was close enough to knock me out. Thankfully, I got up before he could see me and could instead use a stun and paralyze him for the foreseeable future. And now the enemy's moves were becoming less predictable. I had walker gears coming up onto the roof now. I quickly climbed the ladder up into the crow's nest as it was really my only safe option, and began playing Puppet Master to all the little pawns below me. 1 sleep grenade and 2 stuns later, and the airfield looked nearly empty of any marked targets. But a quick glance at my iDroid told me a different story. I popped another Noctocyanin as I was rounding up all my buddies and saw that the last guy was on his way up here. I got him to stop by sending the walker gear through a wormhole, but royally fucked up when I stepped too close to the edge and got spotted. I managed to knock him down with a decoy, but he still got a couple shots off on me. Now, while this whole interaction did trigger an alert status, and I was really trying to avoid those, I kept this in solely because after all this came the weirdest series of enemy comms I'd ever heard in this game. It was like I was stuck in a limbo between having the outpost captured and being in an alert status. And after verifying as much as I could that I'd gotten everyone, I was off. Also, no one even shot at Pequod as he came in or as we left, so yeah, I guess it was clear.
Mission complete, boss.
We'll pick up on this mission from a checkpoint, just as I was arriving at the perimeter of the outpost I was looking to capture. I hopped on out of my Jeep after parking in a safe location, then began heading up the hill towards my first target. I pulled out a decoy, gave it a toss, but failed to throw it far enough, so I had to wait for him to destroy it before shipping this guy off. But this gave me plenty of time to secure at least one of the guards closer to the core of the base. A sleep grenade was used to pacify the one in the tower manning the spotlight, and at this point, I wasn't willing to risk the first guard waking up, so I rushed on over to slip a wormhole generator into his back, then made my way back to the building. I had concocted this play that was relatively risky, but would have a coolness factor payoff if it worked. See, I placed one of my LLG mines down in the doorway here where I knew at least one enemy would travel, then I equipped my stun grenades, turned to the one guy posted up here, and pelted him in the back. Once the thing exploded, I was quick to try and Fulton him out, but the general came sprinting out of that doorway, honestly kind of scaring me a little bit, but fortunately I had that trap set and it worked flawlessly. The rest of the guards were in a kneeling, locked position calling into HQ, so I wrangled up my two sleepy gentlemen out here, needing to swing a wide berth around the doorway so as to not be seen. And I tossed a smoke grenade in the doorway before creeping back out of there silently. And from here, I saw three men grouped up off in the distance, but as I got closer, they all kind of went their separate ways. I targeted the one lone soldier furthest from the rest and sent him into a dream with one of my sleep grenades, and the one operating the spotlight with a stun grenade. Now, while yes, these stun grenades are loud, I was far enough away from everyone that I could send this guy off and be gone before anyone would show up. Not that anyone would anyway. I moved on to the next lone sheep in the next building over, and he'd get a stun to the face as well. The noise would obviously bring the next closest enemy sprinting in my direction, and in a panic, I threw a sleep grenade extremely poorly. Thinking that this dude was out of range of the gas, I also hucked over a stun grenade for safe measure. Unfortunately, the only person getting stunned here was Snake. After waking up, I scanned around for my next victim, and I noticed that two of them had moved over and were now occupying the building that I'd just cleaned out. Rude. One was positioned up top and the other down below. I decided to use the decoys on these two. I sent one of my discs flying in there and deployed it to stun the first one, which in turn caused the one up top to begin shouting commands at my inflatable. He would soon climb down, ignoring his sleeping buddy, and punch the spicy balloon, leaving the only thing left to do be to Fulton them away. 5 guards were left standing now, and I still had plenty of equipment hidden up my prison wallet. The guard up in the crow's nest in the main building would once again be forced to choke down my sleepy gas as I went about stunning his 2 closest allies heading up to him. After sending him into another dimension, I hit another crazy decoy toss on a moving target, then collected my 3 sleeping specimens. The very last guy I ended up playing around with for a little while as I tried to think of a clever way to take him out, but this is the best I could come up with. Now that the outpost was captured and I'd basically collected another small army, I could get back to the Jeep and exfil the hot zone to a spectacular grade.
All right, mission complete, boss. Maybe you'll actually break a sweat next time, huh?
Red Brass is honestly one of the more easier missions to do in this given role set. There just aren't that many guards patrolling around Wilo Village during this time. After some expert driving and accidentally turning on my night vision goggles, we arrive at our target village and begin locating every hostile within it. Some would be arriving soon, so there was a small amount of urgency to my movements. The first enemy I came across would be sent to the moon by an uppercut from one of my decoys, as per usual. From here, I went past a couple enemies I'd deal with later and over to the other side of the camp. After taking notice that this man over here wasn't wearing a gas mask, I lobbed over a sleep grenade to put him out for now. Now, as this happened, I'd hear a jeep approaching off in the distance. One of the commanders was on a fast approach. They took notice of the passed out man and stopped quite a distance away to get out and check on him. Thankfully, I'd blind tossed over another sleep grenade and masterfully placed it right on target. A grand total of 4 Fultons later, and I was headed back towards the center of camp to collect some more friendlies. I was scoping out the next closest hostile before I heard another jeep roaring in the distance. It was the second commander. I decided then that I'd wait until the 2 remaining commanders were at their meeting spot, then I'd sneak inside and finally decoy deploy the 2 of them to the ground. I don't know how the passing guard didn't pay attention to any of this taking place, and so I sent him off with some Fultons to get it. The noise would lure him into whacking my rubber snake to completion, then I could rifle off a stun grenade at his idiot friend through the still open door. And I got a little stun happy with my next hostile encounter as well, forgetting that I'd still needed to use both my smokes and LLG mines. Thankfully, the loud bang from my stun sent an enemy sprinting into its location, and so I planted an LLG mine in response to this. Only for him to be wearing a gas mask. Shit. There was only one other guy. Hopefully, he wasn't wearing one. This guy, though, he'd eat decoy for dinner. Thankfully, as I rounded the corner and got eyes on the last enemy standing, I'd see that he was indeed not wearing a mask, and so I would first disorient him by using a smoke grenade on his location, then I would equip my LLG mine, walk over to where he was standing, and activate the mine before leaping away to avoid its effects. Now that the outpost was captured, all the enemies were now friends, and I could get the hell out of here and move on to the next one.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
Okay, so I included this mission along with a couple others solely because it was either super weird or confused the hell out of me. And this one in particular had kind of a funny outcome, and yes, this is completely doable. Okay, so the entire plan for this mission hinges on getting to a specific building quickly and without getting spotted by Quiet. And this could be done relatively easily if you go down the embankment on the left side of where you spawn and just follow the river inland. There was a specific point where I did second guess my pathing, but got the audio cue that she jumped off from her sniping point, and I was essentially free to run to my desired location. So why this building of all places? Well, this is the building Quiet will go to first every single time without fail, if you aren't spotted by her. I arrived around the same time as her, so I sat and waited for her to post up before making any moves. As soon as she was set, I climbed over the stairs, crept up there, tossed a decoy out at her feet, and bam! She was down. Except, she wasn't. She'd take off, and so I went off looking for a place to hide. I was just about to reset my checkpoint since I'd assumed my attempt was a bust, but then I stopped and thought I'd heard something. I'd heard a split second of Quiet in her healing animation. I unpaused, sprinted over, and began lobbing as many stuns at her as I could. After the haze wore off from all the blank point stuns, I was a little confused. She was gone. So I ran around looking for a place to hide, waiting for that glint to show, but it never did. And all this time, I was completely ignorant to all the radio chatter from Miller and Ocelot, so much so that I reset my checkpoint like an idiot. But thankfully, the moment I'd knocked her out, a checkpoint had hit, and so I just had to move in, secure quiet, and thankfully just exfil out by chopper. Alright, moving on to Code Talker. Code Talker, as you guys may know, is, and I know I say this about a lot of episodes, but Code Talker is one of my favorite missions in MSGV. It's just got the perfect balance of all the exciting new things introduced into this world. First off, you have the Skull Sniper segment, which could be done in multiple various means, one of which being the ability to skip it entirely, which is what I do here. Once I'm in view of the mansion, I take one of my X-ray pills and begin marking all enemies available. Then continue up to the mansion via the conveniently climbable rocks located on the left side of the river. Avoiding the spotlight, and its operator for now, I sweep around back to find two guards getting together for a chat. And this was a perfect opportunity to take out two birds with one decoy. So I did. To get the rest of the use out of my deployed stun decoy, I tried my best to lure the spotlight operator over here with a few dozen empty magazines, but someone else would beat him to it, and so I let him go. Thankfully, I hadn't yet cleared the corner with my magazine lured enemy, and so I could go nab the dude lying on the ground. Which was perfect, because there were now two more incoming. Fultoning this dude would get them to stop in their path for now, allowing me just enough time to hide. I tried my best to set up another double decoy KO, but the corner of the building would just get in the way. Then I swapped to what I thought were my empty mags, but was instead a sleep grenade, and I ended up throwing it over there to lure them out again, and it didn't have the intended effects. The enemies were now a bit more on edge, so I lingered around waiting to see what their rotation looked like. Eventually, someone came back out through that door and I could pin him with yet another decoy. I know, lame. Either way, I went around to scout the other side of the mansion and noticed yet another enemy coming around to where my blown up decoy now lay, and he was falling for it. And the noise from this Fulton would catch the attention of the next closest guard. And, well, y'all know the rest from here. Sleep grenade, Fulton, nap. After the remaining enemies were all on the other side of the map, I knew I needed to move my way inside. Unfortunately, the next three guys I were up against were all wearing gas masks, so stuns and decoys were my only options here. However, I did have to smoke out the two of their bodies in order to discreetly wormhole them away. The last two enemies were both equipped with gas masks, unfortunately, as was pretty much the entire camp, as this is pretty deep into the game. So unfortunately, no, I didn't end up using any LLG mines during this mission, so I guess it's a failure. And I probably shouldn't have included it, but I did. So, yeah.
That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
But don't worry, because it was all worth it. So, it's possible that this entire run was solely designed for this finale. The Lost Chapter from my Subsistence No Traces run, where all the enemies had 200% vision and hearing. And so, here is Blood Runs Deep. The hardest fucking mission I've personally ever done in this game. This mission gave me nightmares. I had to shelf it. I couldn't look at the footage. I needed to come back to it at a later date. And that date is now. 30 attempts. It took me 30 recorded attempts for me to complete this mission. Let's finally go over it. We begin this mission out in the middle of the African plains alongside our trusty steed D-Horse. There's an enemy tank on patrol in this area, so after climbing atop my buddy, I began an all-out sprint towards my first of 6 targets in this mission. Instead of going in through the town he's occupying and avoiding the route the game suggests that you take, I cut right from the main path to loop around to the backside entrance. Parking D-Horse safely next to a couple enemy claymores, I begin my slow entry into this outpost, making sure to stay as low to the ground as possible. Once I'd reached the fence, I could pop up from my prone position and climb over the chain link to then press up against the nearest tent to get a good look at my first target. I'd wait here until he decided to head back inside, then transition back into a belly crawl, heading in the direction of his new location. Upon reaching cover, I could pop back up, equip my water pistol, and hold up the man I was after. Now, I was able to hold him up and disarm him, but something was telling me he wasn't going to go so easily. And so I backed off in anticipation of his counterattack. And just as predicted, he went for it and lost. Now that he was sure he was caught, I could send him up into space via one of my wormholes. And from here, I just turned back to go out the way I came in, triggering a little suspicion as I left. Thankfully, I was far enough out of their sightlines that I could use my patented DD dolphin diving technique to clear out of there quicker. Once I was atop D-Horse again, I began riding off towards the Kunkenga mine to look for the other 5 targets, making sure to hug the edge of the map as I rode. As I came up to an enemy checkpoint on the road, I'd need to dismount off my horse to continue in on foot. Or rather, stomach. I rolled until I couldn't roll anymore, landing on a rock that was positioned on the ground. And this was my signal that I was safe to get up. Eventually, I'd be able to call D-Horse back on over and use him to quickly reach the other side of the mine's entrance gate before the helo ahead could do another pass. I stayed low to the ground as I went about marking every enemy I could from my current vantage point. And after I was sure I was safely out of view of the helo, I popped up to slide down and into the mine. Now that I was inside, my stomach was now damn near required to be glued to the ground. There were several enemies occupying this mine, and all of them were looking in a different direction. But maybe I could use that to my advantage. Staying truer to his name more than ever, I was now guiding Snake along the ground. And my first stop was heading towards the nearest sniper tower, then cutting to a slight right towards the little makeshift bridge that they built across the trench. Once I'd had it in view, I'd pause to wait for the guard crossing it to do so, and after checking to make sure the coast was clear, I got up to slide down the first embankment. Though it was almost a huge mistake. I was given the harshest of warning signs, and I knew I was mere micrometers away from being spotted. Now, to placate this curious foe, I just simply had to go prone in the bushes and wait out his investigation. And then, once again, nearly the exact same scenario would play out as I proceeded to go down another embankment. And then, after a while, I was clear again to go down the last of these elevation changes. I was now in a pretty good spot to descend some more, but I'd have to wait out the rotating guards first. Staying in the shadows as much as I could, I continued pushing slowly down into the core of the mine. From here, it gets increasingly sketchy. I have very little to hide behind, and there are spotlights everywhere. Speaking of spotlights, there's one specific one that I was waiting on before making any sudden movements. But as soon as he was looking the other way, I began my roll towards the ramshackle wooden pathway ahead of me. This is literally all I had for cover down here. But it was kind of all I needed. I eventually made it to the deepest pit of the mine, and it was 2 more times that I have to pause my motion so as to not alarm the same spotlighter before reaching a rock that would hide me from his sight. However, reaching this rock didn't mean that I was safe, since just on the other side, there was yet another spotlight tower. Great. Thankfully, over my 30 plus attempts, I knew the window of opportunity for this one was much more forgiving, so I rolled on through it to relative safety, then paused here for a moment to wait out his rotation once again. As soon as he'd turned, I'd begin inching around the rock that I was next to, but just around this corner was another problem. Yup, another fucking spotlight. And after watching these two rotate back and forth a few times, I'd concluded that they were asynchronous, meaning that there was always one of them watching my position. I'd eventually made an executive call to make my move while the one directly in front of me was turned away, as it seemed like my safest option. And crazily enough, I was able to clear it and make it to the other side unnoticed. A much safer place to be. Now I could use my new cover to inch on ahead and over to the base of the spotlight. Instead of heading in the way you're supposed to, which is like directly past this tower, I instead chose to go in through the back door. So after rolling past this spotlight, I was now pretty darn free and close to wrapping up this mission. But in reality, it was far from over. Now that I was past the lock gate and inside, I can now traverse around on foot and make contact with the 5 remaining targets. After a few cutscenes, I'm back in control and can work on the second part of this mission. Now, I'm supposed to be guiding these kids down the river, past a bunch of guards, and safely to Pequod. However, there's no shot that these kids are trained enough to accomplish that. So instead, I opted for kicking the shit out of them, before then sending them home via some wormholes. Now, you thought this mission was over? Nope, we still gotta get all the way out of here unseen. After saving all the children, I left the caves to go hide in a bush, as I knew that there were gonna be 2 guards pushing through right behind me. After about a minute or so of waiting, I was free to begin moving, heading back out nearly exactly the way I'd come in. Except, now the guards' patterns have changed, and there was far more movement out of them. Surprisingly, I'd made it past all 3 spotlight rotations and got back to the makeshift wooden walkway where I could begin breathing again. Continuing on the reverse path that brought me in here, I'd crawled all the way up to the furthest back part of the trench to pause once again as I heard a guard on rotation right overhead. As soon as he'd turned heel though, I was back in action, slinking up a wooden ramp to my next safe area. I was nearly out of here. I really only had 2 guards left in my way, and a helo that would come over every so often. But other than that, I was damn near free. I thought my only option from here was to leave through that gate that the 2 enemies were standing next to, but was fortunate enough to have enough brain power to look for an alternative. And wouldn't you know it, I'd found a little spot where I could shoddily force Snake up, albeit not without some resistance. But I'd made it. I was nearly clear to call in Pequod and get the fuck out of here. However, there was still the issue of the patrolling enemy helo. I had to time my call with Pequod such that he'd arrive at the LZ as the other one was going away from it. And my first call in likely would have worked, but I was just super sketched out about how close they were in proximity to each other, so I called him off in a panic. Though, on the second call in, I was a little less hesitant, got aboard Pequod safely, and finally put this challenge to bed. Thank you to everyone who got this far, and thank you to everyone who continues to support me as this channel grows. I love you all. I don't have shit for an outro, so I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Area of operations.
Departing!
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.